important occasion for me, not merely because I did glance through this book, browse through it, did not read it, I don't read the books any longer, but I enjoyed the book, and also I get an opportunity of interacting with younger people, mostly from Kerala. I am very clear in my mind that I should speak to you in English only. I had a whole period in my life when I used to make Malayalam speeches, which were really literal translations of English rhetoric. But they went on. Now I feel much more comfortable in English, and I think, be most kind to the members of the audience who do not understand Malayalam. The most interesting thing about this book which I noticed was the inspiration which Yasir has got from the Muslim part of the national movement. The whole book is understandable once you realize that here is the first attempt to project the Islamic factor in India's national movement from 1857 onwards to 1947. This is something which is very important to someone like me who is old enough to remember the Pakistan resolution of 1940 from Lahore, who can also remember the problems which communal riots produced in our country. They are all old things. But this particular book is fascinating because it brings before our eyes some very nice, interesting people. I do not merely mean the well-known great Muslim leaders of India like Asad Ansari and the Ali brothers, but I am merely meaning the less well-known people. Especially, there is a charming intersection of interest in Islam and feminism in Yasir's book. That I think that makes it unique. I am very bad at remembering names. I suffer from what I call nominal amnesia. I remember the people but not their names. But there are two beautiful women whom Yasir has discovered and talked to us about. The great mother of the Ali brothers and a German lady who came and stayed and lived here until 1942 after teaching in Delhi. These are the people whom we should remember, and when we should do it, please remember, Yasir, that is only one part of your journey as a historian. There should be more books about more people, about more ideas. This is not the whole national movement. We had, you remember, a series of books produced by the historical research organization called the Towards the Freedom for the last 30 or 40 years. This little book is something like that, a certain summary of what's happening. Once you think of it that way, you will understand the beauty of the analysis. I don't want to go into details, but certainly when I was glancing through it, I was asking, he said all these things about Delhi. What about Hakim Ajmal Khan? I had not seen him. And then I found 2 minutes later a whole chapter about him. He's, of course, the great pioneer of the Urdu movement in Delhi and India. A very great man. Like that, you've got so many. You, of course, once you realize that, and you're looking for the Islamic element in the Indian national movement, you won't have any reason to be too much disappointed at the absence of normal things in a national movement history. That's why I said he will do more books in which he will talk about other things also. We have had some lovely quotations about history already. Let me add them. The great English poet Auden once said, "History may say to the defeated, 'Alas, but she can neither help nor pardon.'" History can only let you know. History cannot change things. History is something absolutely, irrevocably a part of our lives. I myself am convinced that the whole 20th century English poetry written between 1930 and 1950 were written by young people who were the children of history. They were all born in 1905 to 1908. They grew up as little children, helplessly watching the First World War. And they grew up when the Second World War was slowly, inevitably looming near with Hitler and Mussolini and everything. Now, this is the sort of situation which history means. In our case, history has meant the creation of 3 sovereign states, all of them quite capable of looking after themselves, all of them playing a very important role in world politics. Pakistan, Bangladesh and India. We have also got other states which are not specifically a part of the Indian movement, but who are our neighbors like Sri Lanka and Nepal. This is something very interesting if you go on remembering that we are talking about a subcontinent. And when we are in a world when the euro is in trouble, when all sorts of problems are happening in different parts of the continent of Europe, we must also remember that we have got a very real subcontinent. This is the background of this lovely book. I enjoyed glancing through it. Very many interesting things. And of course, the highlight of the book, as has been already mentioned, is the mother of Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, the great lady who died so early. She has, in my mind, been projected by Yasir to a place important enough to be compared with Annie Besant and Sarojini Naidu, the great women of India's freedom. This is the sort of thing which you would like to do. You have, of course, got problems about this single-minded interest in the Islamic angle. There is one chronology which I glanced through very carefully and I was disappointed to see. I'm sure that Yasir has got a very sensible, intelligent answer to my question. How 1919 is mentioned without Jallianwala Bagh. But it's not, the subject is not the general problem. It is not 1929, for us in our generation, 1919 is Jallianwala Bagh. 29 is the beginning of the Republic Day dream. Jawaharlal Nehru's speech on that as the President of the Indian National Congress in 1929. Now the Republic Day is remembered for the 1950 achievement. But earlier than 50, it had a prehistory of its own. This is what I think we should always remember. In a major population like ours, It's too big to be merely called a country. It's too big to be merely called a subcontinent. With so many literatures, so many things, you've got to remember that we have this particular interest in the world is something which is always there. And so we come to 2 or 3 details which you would enjoy. I am not really making a argued speech. I have explained to you the impression I have had of this lovely book. But I must also add a sentimental factor, which is quite unreasonable, you know. I do hope that they will think about it, the publisher and the author, and write it again in English. It's important because Malayalam is a very important language. It will be of great use, but the non-Malayali audience will get much more out of this than this. So I think I'm hoping that they will be persuaded. Sanal is an old colleague of ours, and we are very happy to associate him with this book. Now I will give you 1 or 2 small nuggets, golden nuggets. I have done some research in Jawaharlal Nehru's writings. I have written a book, and the 1942 meeting in Bombay, which led to the Quit India movement, is something very important, and we all remember what led to it. But it is from this book that I learned something fascinating, that it was Yusuf Meherali who gave Gandhiji this lovely quote, "Quit India." Eh? Yes?
No, I was appreciating Yusuf Meherali's historic work of a professor. I'm sure.
Eh?
I am happy to meet you also here after a long gap.
Yusuf Meherali was a remarkable person. Now that he has reminded me about my distant past, in 1944, May, 2 weeks after Gandhiji was released, we 4 Malayali young student politicians reached Bombay after founding the Indian Students' Congress. And there we had an opportunity of meeting Yusuf Meherali, who was lying very ill and tired. But I do remember the exciting manner in which he spoke. One funny thing he said, I think you will all love to hear. He said, this Jawaharlal Nehru, you know, he is treating that Kripalani, who is a genius, like an office boy. This sort of, you need not agree with it, you not, but this sort of mind Yusuf Meherali was. He was already ill, you know. Remarkable. That group, you know, Yusuf Meherali, Ashok Mitra, then Jayaprakash Narayan, and Achyut Patwardhan. All 4 of them were in the socialist movement, and Achyut Patwardhan was